An incredible note at the museum revealed a hidden truth that transformed my life forever. The moment Emily unwrapped that faded letter, the words blurred together, igniting a wildfire in her heart. It was a cacophony of emotions: disbelief, anger, and a strange surge of hope. She stood surrounded by art that once brought her solace, but now felt like a gilded cage. Each morning she rose with the dawn, dragging herself through days that blurred together, the exhaustion from sleepless nights shadowing her every thought. The heartbeat of life pulsed steadily around her, yet she felt like a mere echo, trapped between the relentless grind of work at the museum and the trials of raising her son, Jake. Can I truly do this? Emily grappled with the question, knowing all too well the weight on her shoulders. Jake was becoming more independent, yet the tremors of his teenage years rustled under the surface, igniting the familiar fear in her gut that she would somehow fail him. The financial uncertainty loomed like a gray cloud. Every bill she faced was a reminder of her limitations, a reminder of what it felt like to be cornered. She had always loved art, but the museum's walls now felt suffocating, crumbling under the pressure of her personal life that sang a dissonant tune against her passion. "Emily, can you come to the exhibit meeting?" Her co-worker's voice abruptly cut through, pulling her back to reality. She was in the midst of curating a show devoted to a local artist whose life was swathed in mystery, a task that had consumed every waking moment. But now, an uninvited torrent of doubt flooded her mind. Torn between her quest for truth and her family's reluctance to dig into the past, she felt the dichotomy of her ambition and responsibility clashing painfully in her chest. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The letter. What if it was more than a hidden truth? The artist was woven into her very being, and peeling back the layers of history could unravel the tapestry of her carefully constructed life. Would Jake understand her need for this? Or would it burden him with her own unsettled past? She hurried through her chores that evening, muscle tension simmering as she prepared dinner, the thought of the exhibition humming ominously in her mind. The pressure mounted, a vice slowly closing its grip on her chest. That night, sleep came as a distant dream, haunting visions of family conflict playing out like an unwelcome dance in head. She envisioned the confrontation, the agony of choosing between her son's comfort and her own truth. The pulse of her heart echoed louder, questions spiraling through her mind. What if her family's history was stitched with shades of pain and beauty? Would the revelation shatter their world, or bind them together in unexpected ways? As she stared out her window, the moon hung heavy, illuminating the uncertainty that loomed. She had dared to dream. Now it felt like a question of survival. Balancing ambition with family loyalty was like walking a tightrope without a safety net. Emily was on the cusp of something monumental, yet all she could feel was the tightening knot of fear in her stomach, the storm of choices waiting to be made. Would she let the light in? Or would she allow the shadows of her past to destroy everything she had built? Morning light streamed through the kitchen window, casting shadows on the coffee-stained countertop, grounding Emily in the moment. The aroma seeped into her skin, breathing life into her weary bones, yet did little to wash away the turmoil that thrummed within her. She fought against the fog of uncertainty that clung to her thoughts and snatched at her motivation. Today would be the day she spoke with Jake, the day they confronted the tangled branches of their family's history. As she stirred the pot of oatmeal, her mind flashed back to the letter, its aged paper crinkled in her hands. Every word was imbued with the artist's despair and resilience, an echo of her own struggles. What an irony. An artist, revered for weaving vibrant colors and chaotic emotions into a masterpiece, now served as the container of her own silenced truths. Maybe she was not dancing on that ornate tightrope after all. If she dared to step onto solid ground instead of teetering above the unknown, what could unfold? "Mom, are we out of peanut butter?" Jake's voice interrupted her reverie, pulling her back to the mundane yet cherished duty of motherhood. His presence, slight yet growing, reminded her of the stakes involved in today's conversation. To approach this is to reveal herself, to open a wound that could bleed for both of them. "Yeah, I'll get some at the store later," she replied, attempting to sound nonchalant, though her heart raced. The mundane replaced with the extraordinary. That had become her daily pattern, and today would be no exception. Once Jake left for school, she sank into the couch, inhaling the stillness of the house now empty of his youthful energy. It was time to prepare for the meeting at the museum. She dressed meticulously, the attire reflecting not just her professionalism, but an unspoken resolve to reclaim her narrative. This exhibit, this local artist, was more than just a good show. It was a pivotal opening for confronting her buried aspirations. The thought anchored her as she closed her eyes, conjuring images of vibrant canvases lined in the gallery, waiting for the world to view them without the veil of fear that confined them. Driving to work was an exercise in focus, a determination to believe in the narrative she was ready to explore. Once inside the museum, Emily could feel the energy buzzing, a symphony of creation and art history overlapping. She navigated through the space, letting the familiar walls breathe life into her, whispering promises of untold stories. As she stepped into the meeting room, she took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. The colleagues gathered, their chatter a blend of professionalism and camaraderie. Yet Emily felt the weight of a personal transformation looming. Her voice quaked as she began to share her vision of the exhibition. "We can't just curate art. We must curate stories," she stated, her hands trembling slightly. The room fell silent, eyes turning toward her with a mix of hesitation and intrigue. There are layers to this artist's life, pain and beauty intertwined, that deserve to be unveiled. Doubt crept in, yet she pressed on, encouraging dialogue, inviting collaboration, wrapping her urgency around the need for authenticity. The discussion flowed. Ideas sparked like fireworks, igniting her passion further. Networked in this shared journey, she was finding herself not just by unveiling the past of another, but in recognizing her own strength within their narratives. As the meeting adjourned, there was applause and acknowledgement, an oasis of affirmation in her tumultuous journey. However, nestled within the accolades, simmered the deeper confrontation that loomed with Jake. Stuffing her notebook into her bag, the exhilaration soon twisted into something heavier. Would unveiling this artist's truth empower her? Or would it force Jake to confront theirs? The gallery, now brimming with possibilities, reflected her inner chaos. The question pulsed. How would Jake respond to the shadows in their family history? As she left the room, determination shadowed by doubt colored her resolve. Would he embrace his mother's newfound strength? Or would he be repulsed by the truth she dared to reveal? Emily turned toward the entrance, the door to both her professional adventure and personal reckoning cracking open before her. The moment of truth was on the horizon. The sun dipped lower in the sky as Emily navigated her way home, each stoplight feeling like a pause in time, intensifying her internal conflict. The day shared at the museum had been exhilarating, igniting a flicker of hope within her. But the looming conversation with Jake overshadowed that light. In every reflection from the car mirror, she confronted not just her image, but also the woman she had long tried to ignore. The mother yearning for authenticity, both in her art and her familial relationships. Arriving home, she opened the door slowly, letting the familiar scent of their space engulf her. Jake's backpack lay strewn across the floor, a remnant of his fleeting presence. She picked it up. The weight of it felt heavy in more ways than one. A reminder that the time for conversation had arrived. No more distractions. No more postponements. She grabbed her phone, glancing at the messages, her heart racing at the thought of not knowing how to approach him. While she settled down on the couch to gather her thoughts, a question nagged at her. What did it mean to be vulnerable? Opening the letter had unlocked painful memories, but it also unveiled an urgency within her. It wasn't just about sharing. It was about healing. Not just herself, but also Jake. What if sharing their family's narrative could forge a new path for him, one lined with resilience rather than fear? With the quiet resounding in the living room, she rehearsed her words. Would she break the news gently, or confront the uncomfortable truths head-on? Each scenario played out like a scene in a play, and with each imagined dialogue, she wavered between resolve and doubt. The afternoon dwindled into evening when Jake finally arrived home, youthful energy radiating from him even at the end of a long school day. His laughter was infectious, but it only deepened her internal battle. She wondered if he had picked up on her transformation from this morning. Once he settled at the kitchen table to start on his homework, she found her moment. "Jake, can we talk for a minute?" His gaze shifted, a flicker of curiosity mingled with uncertainty. The carefree air seemed to evaporate as he set his pencil aside. "Sure, what's up?" Emily inhaled deeply. "I had a meeting at the museum today," she began cautiously, gauging his reaction. "We talked about a local artist's life, and it made me think." The words seemed to stick, reluctant to float into the air. "About our life, too." "What do you mean?" Jake's brow furrowed, concern etched into his expression. "It's about knowing our history, the good and the bad. There are things we've never talked about, like those letters I found." The honesty felt raw, yet necessary. Her pulse raced as she continued. "It's important, Jake. Not just for you or me, but for us." "I don't understand," he replied, the edge in his voice revealing his discomfort. "It's about facing the things we've kept in the shadows." She pressed on gently. "The artist's story parallels ours. It's about struggle, but also about finding strength in our truth." She paused, the weight of her words thickening the air between them. Jake's expression shifted from confusion to something closer to fear. "Why would you want to do that? Isn't it easier to just forget?" Was it easier? She wanted to scream that it wasn't. But she steadied herself, recognizing that confrontation could be frightening, especially for him. "Sometimes confronting pain is what allows us to finally heal. I've started that journey, Jake, and I want to bring you along." The silence stretched, his eyes scanning the floor as if searching for words or escape. Emily's heart ached. This was the moment where courage met stagnation. She wanted him to understand, to embrace the shared burden instead of carrying it alone. Yet she knew that only he could decide when he was ready to confront their history. He finally lifted his gaze, a storm swirling within. "And how do you even know it'll help?" The uncertainty hung between them, a substantive chasm waiting to be crossed. "I don't," she replied, voice steady yet threaded with vulnerability. "But I believe it could." The atmosphere thickened, both an opening and a barrier now palpable between them. In the unsteady space of their relationship, Emily felt her own vulnerability raw, teetering on the edge of an unknown future. Was she ready to traverse the treacherous terrain of the past? What if their truths ignited more than she'd bargained for? The unspoken question lingered as she surveyed Jake's uncertain expression, bracing herself for whatever might unfold next. Would he step forward into this shared light, or retreat back into the shadows? The tension hung heavy, setting the stage for what could be the most pivotal conversation of their lives. The stillness in the room was thick, the clock ticking loudly as Emily and Jake faced one another across the kitchen table. Seconds felt like minutes, and in each pause, she sensed the shifting currents of their lives hanging in the balance. Emily had been prepared for resistance, but the weight of Jake's gaze was unexpected. His uncertainty mirrored her own fragmented thoughts. "Jake, I know this is hard," she began, wanting to soothe the tension, yet feeling the heat of urgency prick at her resolve. "But we've lived in silence for too long. When you keep things hidden, they fester. I've let them fester in my art, and it nearly pushed me away from everything that matters." The confession hung heavy, tinged with regret. He looked at her, his young face shadowed by confusion. "Mom, that artist you talked about, what if digging into the past just makes things worse? What if it just explodes?" The fear in his voice was palpable, a reflection of her own anxieties. Embarking on this delicate endeavor was like walking on a tightrope, and Emily felt the need for a strategy, a way to continue their conversation without losing him completely. "What if I share my part of the story first? Maybe then you can understand that talking about it can be a way to reclaim our power." Jake shrugged. But she noticed how his fingers were fidgeting, seeking comfort as he considered her proposal. Emily took a breath, preparing to unveil her vulnerabilities. "When I found those letters, it felt like uncovering not just family secrets, but also my own. It brought forth memories I'd tucked away, of disappointment and resilience. Every mixed emotion inspires my work, but it's difficult to encapsulate that without confronting the whole narrative." Her words flowed with more passion than she'd expected. They held a reflective light in the shadows. "Do you remember when I struggled to complete that painting last year? It wasn't just about the art. It was about the emotional chaos beneath it. I realized that I was painting from a place of fear, not understanding my own roots." He nodded slowly, beginning to see a nuanced perspective. "So, what you're saying is you need to know the past to express the future?" "Yes." The conviction in her voice surprised her. "If we don't confront our own histories, the stories we try to tell, whether in art or life, can end up being incomplete." Jake fell silent again, this time contemplating something deeper. She could see the gears turning in his mind. "But what if you go digging and find something that hurts too much?" His question was poignant, a hesitance that seeped into her own heart. "That's a risk, one I'm willing to take. But it can foster growth, Jake. Just thinking about it makes me realize how I've been holding back. I want you to embrace every part of who you are, not just the polished surface. I want to do that too." The inner conflict within her thrummed louder. Should she extend this openness to him, or protect him from possible hurt? Vulnerability was beginning to feel less like a burden and more like a path toward liberation. Could they both heal together, or might their truths pull them apart? "I don't want to reopen old wounds," Jake finally said, eyes wide with concern. "What if it affects everything? Our family, our lives?" Surrounded by the silence of the kitchen, Emily recognized the depth of his fear, the weight of letting go. "That's a risk we both face," she answered softly, her voice a testament to their shared humanity. "But sometimes the struggle leads to a clearer understanding of who we are and where we belong." Just then, a small noise pierced their moment. A notification buzz from Emily's phone. Caught off guard, she instinctively looked down. There was a message from the museum, an inquiry regarding her thoughts on potentially showcasing that very piece she'd struggled over. It struck her as a sign, a chance to explore her own story publicly. Jake. She hesitated before unveiling that thread, sensing another bridge materializing at their feet. What if this is an opportunity? What if I share our story, our truths? How would you feel about being part of that? He looked at her, contemplation clouding his features. I don't know, he admitted, vulnerability creeping into his voice. This was the critical juncture, the moment where their paths could intertwine in an unexpected direction. We can take it one step at a time, she suggested, emboldened by her own belief. If you help me, we could redefine how we both see our past and shape our future together. As she spoke, uncertainty still danced on the horizon, but a flicker of possibility illuminated the room. Would Jake be willing to explore this shared journey? The stakes felt higher than ever. This would be an exploration into their very identities. Would the shadows reveal a connection that could bind them closer together? Or would it tear at the seams of their relationship? Emily's heart thudded as she awaited his response, bracing herself for the next step in this uncharted territory. Emily shifted in her seat, her heart racing as she studied Jake's apprehensive expression. She had just dared to suggest a journey both daunting and exhilarating, but she now sensed the frailty of that enthusiasm. She could see that her words hung in the air between them, charged with potential yet laced with trepidation. What if this led them into deeper shadows, rather than illuminating their path? As silence enveloped the kitchen once more, the faint ticking of the clock became an intrusion, underscoring the lack of resolution. She felt the weight of her dreams, an urge to break free from years of suppression, battling with the fear of revealing too much, too soon. Jake, she prompted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you need from me to feel comfortable with this? He squirmed, contemplating how to articulate the turmoil churning in his mind. I don't know, Mom. I want to understand why all this feels so heavy. Both of them lingered on the brink of vulnerability, their mutual hesitance creating a fragile line between them. Emily realized then that their connection was more profound than she'd anticipated. They were both standing on the cusp of reclaiming not just their individual stories, but their shared narrative, and it bore the weight of responsibility. She took a moment to gather her thoughts. What if we start small? Just you and me, reflecting, writing down whatever comes to mind about our feelings on the past. No pressure to share. It could be our private exploration. Jake rubbed the back of his neck, evaluating her suggestion. You mean like journaling? Exactly. We can both put down our thoughts without judgment. It could serve as a foundation for when we feel ready to talk more openly. The thought of penning his emotions intrigued him, yet dread flickered in his eyes. And if I write something that makes me feel worse? Or if I find something I didn't want to know? Then we face it together, she stated, her determination firmly rooted in her belief that their truths, however painful, were part of what made them whole. Jake glanced away, wrestling with the idea. I suppose it sounds less scary if I don't have to discuss it right away. A flicker of relief washed over Emily. That's it. We'll take it one page at a time. And if it feels like too much, that's okay. We can pause. As they continued discussing this new approach, a tentative enthusiasm began to weave through the air. She could sense a shift in Jake. His barriers were lowering, albeit slightly. What had begun as a confrontation of silence was transforming into a potential healing space. Night fell quietly around them, but the kitchen felt warmer, imbued with the subtle promise of hope. Yet even as a fresh intimacy blossomed between them, deep-seated fears lurked underneath, like shadows waiting to rise. I guess it would help me to know what you found in those letters, too. I'm not just a bystander in this. I want to understand your story. Hankerless thoughts twisted in Emily's mind. Reliving the letters felt daunting. Each word contained echoes of long-buried shame and insights that could reshape how Jake viewed their family legacy. Okay. She nodded slowly. I can share what I've uncovered. But we'll do it when you're ready. Let's first see what these reflections bring out for each of us. This was more than a dialogue. It was an unspoken promise of partnership in the face of their respective demons. Yet still, a cascade of uncertainty loomed. Hours later, as she lay in bed, Emily couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that this was just the beginning. She had opened a door, and any force could rush through it. Fear, anger, truth, or even relief. Would they emerge with newfound strength, or risk unraveling the delicate threads of their connection altogether? Resolute, she decided the next step was essential. Reaching out to the museum, embracing the opportunity perched at the precipice of her evolution. Exploring her art would echo their current journey, anchoring her in the midst of chaos. With the morning light would shine clarity, but as her eyes fluttered closed, uncertainty slid like a shadow over her thoughts. How far would she and Jake go to unveil the layers of their pasts? Tomorrow would present itself with its own challenges. The interaction with the museum held the potential for profound revelations. Could it unravel not only her buried turmoil, but also the hidden depths of Jake's unresolved fears and aspirations? In the echoing stillness of her anxious heart, one truth crystallized. This was merely a beginning, fraught with countless questions that threatened to reshape everything they held dear. Emily woke to the gentle glow of morning light streaming through her window, illuminating the room in a soft embrace. She had prepared herself for the day ahead, yet a tension lingered in the air, clinging like mist. Her thoughts drifted back to the conversation with Jake, intertwining with her commitment to reach out to the museum. The prospect was both exhilarating and daunting. Drawing a deep breath, she pulled herself from the comfort of her bed and brewed a strong cup of coffee, letting the steam settle in the cool morning air. Each sip provided a moment of clarity in the haze of worry. She needed to step beyond her familiar boundaries. Her art was a reflection of her experiences, each stroke resonating with echoes of her past, and now felt like a vital link to share with Jake. After breakfast, Emily sat at her desk, the old wooden surface covered with a hodgepodge of papers and brushes, remnants of unfinished projects. She opened her laptop and the email application, the cursor flashing, indicating a world of possibilities just waiting for her command. She typed the words slowly, carefully articulating her purpose. Dear Curator, I would like to discuss a potential collaboration regarding my recent findings related to our shared history. As she clicked send, a weight lifted from her shoulders. The act of reaching out felt like taking a bold step towards self-affirmation. But thoughts of Jake loomed large. How would he respond to the revelations they were poised to uncover together? Was he ready for what lay ahead? Hours ticked by, punctuated by scattered moments of anxiety. She found herself leafing through old sketches, remnants of emotional intentions captured on paper. Each image invoked memories she had long tucked away, reminding her of her journey, every mistake and triumph contributing to her growth. Her art was a mirror, revealing her hidden competencies. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she needed more than expression. They both needed to confront their shared legacy. Once lunch had passed, Jake re-entered the house, his energy palpable as he tossed his backpack aside. He paused upon seeing Emily hunched over a sketch. What are you working on? She hesitated, gauging his mood. Just some reflections, she replied, gesturing vaguely towards her disarrayed workspace. Though I was thinking it might be nice to start our journaling practice today. Jake plopped down across from her, fingers fiddling with the hem of his shirt. Okay. His tone carried the weight of reluctance, yet curiosity flickered in his eyes. But what if it gets too intense? Then we can stop. It's all in our hands, she assured him, her voice steady. The goal is to explore, not to overwhelm. Time slipped away as they delved into their thoughts. Emily poured her fears onto the page. Regrets, missed opportunities, the suffocating illusion of perfection. Each sentence served as a release, tethering her both to the present and the ghosts of her past. Across the table, Jake battled with his own shields. She could sense his frustration as he scribbled and crossed out lines, words flowing like water struggling against a dam. Finally, he dropped the pen. What if my past is just terrible? Then we confront it, she answered, her resolve unyielding. You don't have to face those truths alone. Their respective reflections laid bare, she witnessed the glimmer of understanding spark in his eyes, a shared acknowledgement of their roles in shaping each other's reality. The act of opening wounds was undeniably terrifying, yet, in that moment, a flicker of hope ignited. As evening approached, Emily glanced at the clock, her heart racing with exhilaration and fear in equal measure. The email had been sent, but no response had come yet. The curator's insight would connect her to a rich past, perhaps intertwining their stories in ways they hadn't comprehended before. However, deeper questions remained unresolved. Would this exploration deepen their bond, or unearth uncomfortable truths that could threaten the tenuous connection they were beginning to cultivate? The phone vibrated, jolting her back to the present. One new email popped up, an invitation to meet for a discussion about her findings at the museum. It was not only an opportunity to share her artistry, but a pivotal moment to face whatever shadows lay lurking within their family history. The path ahead was certainly fraught with peril, the stakes higher than she'd imagined. But the urgency to seek understanding consumed her. With her gaze fixed on Jake, equally lost in thought, one question unspooled endlessly in her mind. How ready were they to confront the chaos, the legacy of what had been? As they both moved forward in their reflections, the reverberations of the past pulled them deeper into a labyrinth. Tomorrow would lay bare what they were truly prepared to uncover, and what transformation awaited them might change everything they had ever known. Emily stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her favorite blouse. Today was a turning point, an intersection between her past and an uncertain future. The weight of the email she received had left her buzzing with anticipation, yet threaded with an anxiety that clung to her spine like a chill. She closed her eyes briefly, drawing in a breath, attempting to conjure the confidence she often painted onto the canvases that rested scattered across her studio. Arriving at the museum, she felt as if she were stepping into a primordial place, each exhibit echoing possibilities and choices rooted in history. The walls whispered stories of triumph and heartache, mirroring her internal chaos. In the lobby, a vibrant mural depicting her town's rich heritage captivated her attention. It felt oddly prophetic, as if it were wrapped in layers of complexities and truths she was about to navigate. She approached the curator's office, her pulse quickening with each footfall. The door loomed before her like a portal. This meeting was more than just a professional discussion. It represented her desire to forge connections and to integrate her fragmented identity with the threads of ancestry. With a single knock, she felt the threshold of her courage. "Emily, come in." The curator greeted her with a warm smile that broke her tension. They exchanged pleasantries, and as conversation flowed, she exhibited a palpable blend of enthusiasm and unease. The curator was familiar with the expansive history of their shared heritage and related the museum's interest in her findings. Details about a forgotten lineage that had begun to surface in her work. As they discussed the potential exhibition, Emily's mind raced with thoughts of Jake. Could their discoveries intertwine their narratives in a manner that illuminated the darkened corners of their shared past? What would it mean for a bond that had barely begun to form? Yet beneath her thoughts, a gnawing doubt lingered. Could these revelations unearth shadows better left untouched? "Your perspective is unique," the curator remarked, pulling her back to the present. There's something in your paintings that evokes not just beauty, but the weight of struggle. We should explore how we can integrate that into our exhibit to define our history more truthfully. The curator's words struck Emily like thunder, igniting a fire within her. This was her moment. Not just to share her art, but to reclaim her narrative and challenge the institutions that had overlooked so much suffering. She began to realize that her art had always been more than passive expression. It was a vehicle for confrontation and transformation. As they settled into deeper discussions, the curator revealed an old ledger they had recently unearthed. Documents linked to both families, connecting their histories far more than she had ever realized. Intrigued, Emily leaned forward, her heart fluttering with both excitement and dread. Could this ledger contain truth that might change how she understood herself, and perhaps how she would stand with Jake? There's something else, the curator added, hesitating, eyes glinting with intrigue. We also found a series of letters. They might shed light on personal aspects of your family's past. Emily's breath hitched. The letters could unearth feelings long buried, and she would have to confront what she'd avoided for too long. A singular thought resonated. This was her chance to not only face the truth of her family, but also to grasp her own identity more firmly. Are you ready for this? The curator's voice pierced through her whirlwind of emotions. The question loomed larger than life. It echoed a challenge she had often whispered to herself. No longer could she remain in the shadows of her own story. As she opened her mouth to respond, the door swung open, and the world outside rushed in, drowning her in a flood of potential disruptions and revelations. Deep within her, a tremor of resolve solidified. She was ready to embrace the chaos that loomed, determined to chart a course through the depths of her legacy. What awaited her beyond the curtain of uncertainty felt monumental. Yet, as she grappled with the possibility of confronting family secrets, one question pierced through her heart. How would this journey redefine not only her art, but the very connection she was forging with Jake? As she emerged from the curator's office, Emily felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. The air around her crackled with the energy of untold stories, both personal and historical. Each step towards her studio felt heavy with anticipation. The prospect of uncovering her past and possibly affecting her future with Jake loomed large in her mind. In the sanctuary of her studio, she grabbed a brush, the familiar weight feeling both comforting and perplexing. Her canvases, a blend of vibrant yellows and somber blues, whispered to her. They were extensions of her thoughts, unspoken truths, but also the chaos that resided within. Standing in front of her largest piece, one that portrayed the stark beauty of a stormy sky over a fading landscape, she questioned whether her art could serve as more than an emotional outlet. Perhaps it could become a tool for change, a conduit through which she could wield the stories she had yet to fully understand. What if this journey into her family history wasn't just about the past? What if it was about defining who she was in the present? The revelation tugged at her, a challenge to capture the essence of her findings in her next work. The thought ignited a spark in her. Transformational art was a flame she had not yet fully embraced, but the possibilities were dizzying. Slowly she began to layer paint onto the canvas, her hands moving instinctively, as though they carried a wisdom that now transcended her conscious mind. Hours melted away as she lost herself in the strokes and hues, her heart racing with the idea that she was beginning to bridge her inner chaos and her artistry. Each brushstroke represented her lineage, her struggles, and the whispers of the letters yet to be read. Pain that once felt insurmountable started to morph into something more potent, the catalyst of her identity. Suddenly a thought punctured her focus. Jake. What would he think of the path she was taking? Would he see her quest as obsessive, or would it resonate with his own desire to understand the layers of his family's history? The connection between them was tenuous, yet profound. And Emily knew that confronting her past might bring them closer, or possibly fracture the fragile bond they had built. The paint dried as she paused, staring at the evolving masterpiece while grappling with the duality of intimacy and distance. With her family's history unfolding like a tapestry, what would it mean for her relationship with him? Could their exploration of intertwined pasts foster a deeper understanding? Or would it reveal layers of themselves both were unprepared to face? Determined not to allow fear to hold her back from discovering the truth, Emily wiped her brush clean. The tension was palpable, each question pushing against her resolve. Later that evening, after losing herself in thought and paint, she picked up her phone and hesitated. She wanted to share her progress with Jake, to reveal her evolution. Would he embrace her passion? Or would he fear what the past might unveil about them both? With each ring, anxiety twisted in her stomach. Would her next revelation draw them closer, or push him away? Just as the call connected, and she heard his familiar voice, a sudden thought flickered across her mind. What if, in the midst of her discoveries, she lost herself entirely to the weight of history? "Hey, Jake. I think I need to talk," Emily began, her voice barely a whisper against the crumbling edges of her certainty. Just then, the door swung open, and the curator's assistant walked in carrying an envelope, thick and worn, addressed to Emily. Her heart sank with a mix of confusion and curiosity. What new revelation would this document hold? As she reached for it, a sense of dread intertwined with anticipation washed over her. Would it hold the key to her past? Or perhaps unlock a new chapter in her relationship with Jake? Emily's fingers trembled slightly as she lifted the envelope from the assistant's hands, its weight palpable, as though it held more than just paper. She could feel the anticipation swirling in her stomach, mingling with the remnants of anxiety she had felt during the call. Each second stretched, amplifying her sense of urgency and fear. What secrets lay within this envelope? Would it confirm her suspicions, or smash the fragile facade she had constructed around her identity? The curator had hinted at revelations pertaining to her heritage. It was all at once exhilarating and terrifying. She tore the envelope open, the sound slicing through her studio silence, and pulled out a stack of documents yellowed with age. As she began to sift through the contents, the initial thrill of discovery quickly transformed into a deepening sense of foreboding. There were birth certificates, photographs of faces she had never seen, but, in some way, felt profoundly connected to, and letters written in elegant cursive that spoke of longing and resilience. A particular letter, worn around the edges, caught her eye. The handwriting was so familiar, yet suffused with a sadness that squeezed at her heart. Emily sank into a chair, unable to process the torrent of emotions swirling within her. The letter revealed a heart-wrenching story of loss, a family torn apart by choices and circumstances she hadn't known existed. It contained names, places, and connections that twisted and turned like threads in a loom, weaving a tapestry she had yet to fully comprehend. But the most striking line leapt off the page, causing her breath to catch. "I made a choice to protect you, but in doing so, I lost myself." The words resonated with her own internal struggles. Could she too risk losing herself by confronting the truths embedded in her family's past? Emily knew that grappling with this revelation had profound implications, not only for her own existence, but also for her relationship with Jake. Would he be prepared for what she had unearthed? Would he understand the magnitude of her transformation? The duality of her emotions, excitement for her artistic journey, and trepidation for what this meant for their connection, wrestled within her. Flashes of Jake's enthusiasm for their shared explorations flickered in her memory. Could he possibly mirror her determination to dive deeper into the enigma of heritage? Something in her chest swelled with hope, yet the accompanying fear weighed her down. The distance she felt from him began to threaten the bond they had nurtured. She glanced at her unfinished canvas, a chaotic storm brewing in beautiful disarray. Painting had always been her refuge, but now it felt like a battleground. What she painted next needed to encapsulate not just her lineage, but also the tremors of vulnerability radiating from her heart. Yet the question loomed larger. Would Jake stand beside her when she revealed the weight of her newfound understanding? Without realizing it, Emily was already reaching for her phone again, her resolve coalescing into something more powerful than uncertainty. This time she wouldn't let fear silence her. She needed to bring Jake into this unfolding journey, even if it meant confronting some uncomfortable truths. With the letter in one hand and her phone in the other, she dialed his number, a wave of determination rippling through her. As the phone rang, she felt the urgency of her situation become tangible. Each pulse of the dial tone echoed the rhythm of her heart, building anticipation. When Jake picked up, his voice wrapped around her like a warm embrace, yet the tension crackled in the air like static electricity. "Hey, Emily. What's going on?" She inhaled sharply, words forming solidly in her mind. This was it. The moment that could either strengthen her resolve or unravel her in unexpected ways. "Jake, I have something important to share. Something about my family. About us." As her voice faltered slightly, Emily prepared herself for the challenge ahead. What revelations she would lay bare wouldn't just define her past, but could also alter the trajectory of their lives together. The moment was charged, and no matter what lay on the horizon, she was ready to confront both the truths within and the connection they shared. Would this newfound clarity deepen their bond, or would the ghosts of the past prove too heavy to bear? As Emily sat on the edge of her chair, the tension coiling in her stomach, she realized that this was the moment she'd been preparing for. An opportunity to transcend the confines of her hidden fears and share the truth of her family's legacy with Jake. The weight of the letter pressed against her thoughts, invigorating her resolve to reclaim her identity and, hopefully, steer their relationship toward uncharted territory. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Jake's voice crackled with curiosity and apprehension, drawing her back to the present. The air in their kitchen felt charged, as if they had stepped into the arena of truth, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. "I found something. Documents about our family history. It's complicated and painful, but I think it's important for both of us to understand where we come from." Her voice trembled slightly, but the determination in her heart propelled her forward. She could not retreat to the shadows any longer. "Family history? Like those letters?" He shifted in his seat, brow furrowing as he processed the enormity of her words. "Why now? Why do we need to know this? Because I believe facing our past will allow us to understand ourselves better, to break generational patterns, and to build something different together. I don't want to hide from what has shaped us." Emily's heart raced as she ventured deeper into the conversation, pulling from her courage and the powerful discoveries she had made that day. "What did you find?" Jake's curiosity pushed through, though the skepticism lingered. Emily took a breath, prepared to share the ultimate truth, the matter that could either fortify their bond or send them spiraling apart. The letters speak of sacrifices and choices made to protect one another. They hurt. They reveal that my past, our family's past, is riddled with heartbreak, but also resilience. It has shaped how I approach life and how I've raised you. Isn't it safer to keep all this hidden?" The fear in his voice was unmistakable, but that fear echoed her own worries. What if unearthed secrets shattered the ideals of safety she had built? Safety isn't the same as living our truth, Jake. Our history is a part of us, and I want you to embrace it with all its chaos, rather than live in the confines of unaware ignorance. Her resolve held firm, compelling her to continue, despite the emotional weight pressing against her chest. "Just tell me then, What did they say? He pressed, voice steadying as he grasped the gravity of the situation. Summoning every fragment of determination, Emily shared the letter's accounts. The pain of loss, the sacrifices made out of love, and the struggle for identity that mirrored their journey. This artist we're showcasing, the struggles they faced, the complexities. They're a representation of what our family has endured. I want us to reclaim that narrative together, not hide from it. Jake shifted uncomfortably, the weight of the conversation stirring a whirlpool of emotions within him. Why didn't you tell me before? You've always kept things hidden, he said, voice wavering between anger and fear. Because I was afraid of the hurt it could bring, of how it might ripple through our lives. Emily admitted, her heart pounding. She had kept her own past tucked away, fearing it would stumble into their shared existence. But I realize now that true connection comes with unveiling the parts of ourselves that ache, just like the art I create. Only then can we grow and heal together. Jake's eyes searched hers, a deep introspection unfurling as he processed her words. Maybe I don't understand everything you're saying, but I want to explore too. If these letters mean something to you, maybe we owe it to ourselves to confront them together. The act of sharing a fragile piece of her heart had lit a spark. Jake's willingness to step forward in the face of uncertainty felt like a breakthrough, illuminating the truth that resided between them. It was no longer a solitary journey. They were bound to confront their legacy as a duo, and together they could rewrite their narrative. Rising, Emily felt an unexpected lightness, a clarity that resided within her being. The journey ahead may be rocky, yet the connection she rekindled with her son emboldened her, as each step paved the way for transformative healing. That evening, as they pulled out the letters and sketches she had made from her findings, a profound silence enveloped the room. They began to piece together their family history, slowly unearthing layers of love, loss, and resilience that unraveled like threads in a fragile tapestry. With a determination unmarred by past doubts, they ventured forward, believing in the potential of connecting with their roots. As the first words spilled forth, Emily felt the power of beginning anew. They would explore their past, not as victims of circumstances, but as architects of their own future. This felt like more than just a journey toward understanding. It was a path toward shared empowerment, vital connection, and a reclamation of their narratives. With a newfound sense of purpose, Emily made room for the artistic stories yet to be revealed. Not just in canvases, but in the dynamic relationship she was fostering with Jake. They were authors writing their tales as they stood at the intersection of truth and hope, ready to shape their identity with the bold strokes of courage and resilience. Emily realized she would no longer shy away from the shadows. Instead, she would bring them into the light, anchored by the promise of a future that was no longer shackled by hidden truths, but embraced by the full spectrum of their family's legacy. This was their moment, an incredible opportunity to transform not just their individual stories, but to redefine their connection forever. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and get this tale the reach it deserves. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.